In Alushta, Crimea, daily life now revolves around the brief, precious hours when water flows, just 8 hours a day. Families rush to fill every container they own, then wait anxiously for the next ration. For 77 settlements, water only arrives by military tanker, often murky and metallic, but it's all they have. Every drop is rationed for drinking, cooking and washing, with parents worrying about their children's health and the elderly struggling to carry heavy loads. Low water pressure is causing sewage failures, filling neighborhoods with foul odors, and raising fears of disease outbreaks. The psychological toll is immense. Neighbors eye each other's water use, and the sense of community is eroding. The promise of prosperity under Russian rule has evaporated, replaced by a daily struggle for survival. The Black Sea's blue expanse now mocks the thirst that defines life on the peninsula. Instead of abundance, there's only scarcity and anxiety. Crimea, once a coveted prize, is becoming unlivable for its conquerors. Crimea's water crisis began with a single devastating act, the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam by Russian forces in June 2023. Intended to halt a Ukrainian advance, the explosion drained the Kakhovka Reservoir, cutting off the North Crimean Canal, Crimea's main water source. For years, Russia blamed Ukraine for water shortages, but now, Moscow's own actions severed the peninsula's lifeline. The canal, once a symbol of Soviet engineering, dried up almost overnight. Local reservoirs, briefly replenished, became isolated and quickly depleted by millions of residents, a large military presence, and thirsty farms. The Kremlin's narrative shifted from blaming Ukraine to downplaying the crisis, but the reality was impossible to hide. The dry canal stands as a stark reminder of a military decision that sacrificed Crimea's future for a fleeting tactical gain. Russia gained control of the tap, only to destroy the well. The consequences are irreversible, and the region's viability is now in question. The peninsula's fate was sealed by its own occupiers. In desperation, Russian authorities launched a frantic campaign to drill for groundwater across Crimea. Propaganda promised endless fresh water, but the reality was ecological disaster. As aquifers were drained, seawater seeped in, salinizing the soil and poisoning farmland. Once fertile fields now lie barren, and the water from new wells is increasingly brackish, unfit for drinking or crops. Experts warn the damage is nearly irreversible, with recovery possibly taking decades. Moscow's other solutions, underwater pipelines, cloud seeding, extracting water from the sea, are little more than distractions. These grand promises do nothing for people waiting in line for tanker deliveries. The drills bring up salty water, the clouds bring no rain, and the taps remain dry. The peninsula's agricultural future is being destroyed in the search for a quick fix. The crisis deepens, and hope fades. Crimea's land is being sacrificed for empty promises. Crimea was once Russia's fruit garden, its fields and vineyards thriving thanks to Dnipro water. Now agriculture has collapsed, fields lie fallow, livestock are slaughtered, and farmers face bankruptcy. Dairy farms rely on powdered milk from the mainland, and machinery rusts in the sun. The region is no longer self-sufficient. Nearly all food must be imported across the vulnerable Kerch Bridge. This logistical strain drains billions from Russia's budget just to keep Crimea fed. The economic collapse is driving a demographic shift. The dream of a seaside retirement has become a nightmare. New residents, once lured by promises of prosperity, are quietly leaving as water rationing and property values plummet. The Russification project is unraveling. Crimea has become an economic black hole, its promise broken. The land's bounty is gone, replaced by scarcity and exodus. The fruit garden is now a wasteland. The water crisis is crippling Russia's war effort in Crimea. Military trucks now haul water instead of ammunition, stretching logistics to the breaking point. The Kerch Bridge, already a target for Ukrainian attacks, is choked with convoys carrying both supplies and basic necessities. Soldiers face unsanitary conditions, with waterborne diseases threatening combat readiness as much as enemy fire. Protecting water convoys diverts manpower from the front, making settlements and bases vulnerable. Any disruption to this fragile supply chain could render large areas uninhabitable and military positions untenable. The thirst of civilians and troops alike has become a strategic liability. Russia is fighting a war on two fronts against Ukraine and against its own logistical collapse. The crisis is undermining the very occupation it was meant to sustain. In Crimea, water is now a currency, exposing deep corruption and inequality. The military and elites enjoy uninterrupted supply, while ordinary citizens, especially Crimean Tatars and pro-Ukrainian residents, face harsh rationing. The sight of lush official gardens next to dry apartment blocks fuels public anger. Years of investment vanished into corrupt pockets, leaving a water network that loses over 70% of its supply to leaks. Now, bribes are demanded for tanker access, and protests are met with repression. The government criminalizes discussion of the crisis, desperate to control the narrative. Blame is passed between Moscow and local officials, but the suffering continues. The crisis is no longer just about water. It's about justice and survival. Inequality and corruption are deepening the peninsula's wounds. As 2025 ends, Crimea faces a bleak future. Ecological damage from reckless drilling is likely permanent, turning farmland into desert. The Russification project is failing, with newcomers leaving and property values collapsing. The local population is trapped, resentful, and governed by authorities who prioritize military needs over human survival. Without change, Crimea will become a hollowed-out military outpost, dependent on a fragile supply line. The vibrant resorts and farms are fading memories, replaced by economic and ecological ruin. The peninsula is now a costly, unsustainable garrison, a drain on Russia's resources. The water crisis exposes the fatal flaw in Russia's imperial ambitions: conquest without a plan for people or land. The destruction of the Kakhovka dam was both a military blunder and a metaphor for the entire venture. In trying to secure Crimea, Russia has poisoned its own prize, leaving behind a salt-scorched, uninhabitable land.